What's going on today, YouTube? Welcome back to your favorite cyclist YouTube channel and this week's Bike Quick Talks. So what are we talking about this week? This week we're going to be talking about the difference between a coil fork and an air fork and what the big differences are between those two. But before we get into today's video, if you are new to my channel, make sure you head down below, hit that subscribe button for me. If you already are subscribed, make sure you hit that little bell icon next to that. That way you get notified every time I upload. That way you don't miss any of these awesome bike quick talks, rides, tutorials, reviews, all this fun stuff we do on this channel. So let's get right into this here. What is the difference between a coil fork and an air fork? So we're gonna go ahead and start with a coil fork here. So I got my Trek 3700 here. This one does have a coil fork on here. This actually has a RockShox Dart 2 on this bike. It's an old version. Don't worry about it. It's a coil fork. So, coil forks. What is a coil fork? So essentially a coil fork, very simple design to it. Essentially in your fork legs right here, there's a coil spring. That's how it works. You got a coil spring in there, and that's basically how it works. You got a coil spring in there, so as you go up and down, the coil spring absorbs and really kind of deflects. Deflects, is that the right word? It's basically what happens is pretty much when you're riding on rough road or rough terrain or going off a jump or whatever that might be, there's a spring in here that has a set spring rate already that pretty much when you go off a bump or you're going down the road, it's where it's soaking up your suspension right here, making sure everything's nice and smooth in the front. Downfall of this is, like I said, it only has one set spring rate. It doesn't have multiple options. Pretty much whatever spring rate that is, you're stuck with it without changing out that spring in there, which is a bigger process, not something you generally do yourself. So that is the kind of downfall there. With the coil forks, you really don't have much adjustability at all. That's gonna be the downfall. Pretty much they come out of the box, there you go. There's your fork, done. Some coil forks you're gonna get some are gonna have a lockout on them, not very common. They're also gonna have, some will have a adjustment here. This one has a preload adjustment up here on the fork leg. So you do have a little bit of adjustment preload on that spring. I can tell you from experience, that doesn't do much on that bike, especially on this fork. I've never had an experience where you can have a lot of adjustability on a coil spring fork. Coil spring forks, you're pretty much gonna find them on anything from a entry-level Walmart bike. So if you got a bike like Project Mongoose up here, that one has a coil spring fork on there. That one has absolutely no adjustment to it and very limited travel, up to something like this, and maybe a model up from this, which is gonna have a lockout on there, maybe a little bit more travel. So that's gonna be your coil spring fork right there. And moving on to the next fork, you're gonna have a air fork versus a coil spring fork. So bikes like my Superfly, generally anything above like a $800, $900, $1,000 range, generally gonna come with an air fork on there. Now how do you tell that you have an air fork versus a coil fork? Big giveaway here. On this side of the fork right here, there's gonna be a cap, and underneath that's gonna be like a Schrader valve. That tells you have an air fork versus a coil fork. There's no cap here. A lot of times they say air up on the top. If it says air, you got an air fork. If you don't, it doesn't say air, probably don't have one. So what's the big deal with an air fork? Why is it better than a coil spring fork? With an air fork, you have a lot of adjustability. Whereas in a coil spring fork, pretty much this right here, all that it is a spring, and it's got set spring rate, and that's pretty much all you get. On these, this is actually your air chamber here. Well, it's on the other side. But this is your air chamber. I'm gonna use this side because this is one side the camera's facing. So this is your air chamber. So with this, you can adjust the air pressure by putting more or less air in up on the air valve up on the top, and that will adjust how soft and how hard the suspension is going to be. Therefore it gives you a lot more adjustability on how you like to ride your bike. If I'm going down a hill on this, generally I'm gonna put maybe a little bit more air in there. That way I can stand up to the large drops a little bit better without bottoming out the suspension. Whereas if I'm riding cross country, just down the road or just down this local single track, I'm gonna leave it about where I normally do, right in the middle. Or a little bit lower if it's, if it tends to be a little bumpy terrain, but it's generally flat. Just gonna help make a big difference there. With these, they also do, pretty much any of them, gonna come with a lockout on here, whether that's a manual lockout, remote lockout, whatever that may be. They're gonna come with a lockout on there. That way you have the ability to ride on the road or ride faster on just flat ground without your suspension soaking up any of your power. Along with that, they do give you some adjustment. This is the RockShox TK Silver on here, the Recon Silver that's on here. And this one here, pretty much it has a rebound adjustment. It's gonna be right down here on the lower fork leg. So you do have that adjustment there. And pretty much what the rebound's gonna do is slow down or speed up how fast that fork is coming, pretty much bouncing back. So as you push down on the fork, how fast it's gonna rebound back up and go back to its resting position, I guess you could say. So it does have that adjustment on there. Some forks do have other options like damping, Rebound to course is going to be on there. Just depends on the style of fork you want. Ultimately, the biggest difference between a air fork and a coil fork going to be the adjustability difference there. If you're looking for as much adjustability as you want on your bike as you can get an air fork. You're gonna notice a huge difference. I can notice a huge difference between riding my Superfly and riding my Trek 3700 with just a regular fork. It's night and day. It also helps that you can tune everything you'd like to the type of riding you're gonna be doing versus just being set with one spring rate for one specific purpose or one specific ride. So that's gonna be the big difference there, adjustability. Having an adjustable fork with an air fork versus having generally a non-adjustable fork with the coil fork, biggest difference there. So I hope you guys learned something from this video. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up. Appreciate the support. Do you have any comments or questions? Let me know down in the comment section below. Love hearing from you guys. Love answering any questions you guys have. And we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching today.